Imagine the rules that govern your community suddenly changing, and you had absolutely no say in it. Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. It's a fascinating legal case about a homeowners association, a secret meeting, and a massive shift in power that all came down to how you read just three little words. Let's get into it. So check this out. Before this meeting, if you wanted to change the rules in this community, you needed to get 1,058 votes, a huge majority. After a single board decision, that number plummeted to just 106. That's a difference of 952 votes. Just gone.
So the big question is, how on earth is something like this even possible? How can a small group of people fundamentally change the voting power for over 1,300 members, basically overnight, and think they can get away with it? I mean, just look at the numbers. You have 1,322 members total. The original rule required a huge chunk of them to agree. The new rule, it's just a tiny fraction. This wasn't some minor tweak. This was a complete teardown and rebuild of the community's power structure. To understand how they did it, we have to rewind the clock to a board meeting on October 16, 2006. And it wasn't the public meeting that really mattered. It was what happened right before in a private, closed-door executive session. Okay, so this was the original rule, straight from their governing documents. It seems pretty straightforward, right? To change the rules, you need an 80% yes vote from the entire association. With 1,322 members, you do the math. That's 1,058 votes. That is a really high bar to clear. And, to be fair, the board had its reasons. They felt this 80% rule was so strict that it made it, and this is their quote, virtually impossible to make any changes at all. They'd tried and failed before, even on stuff most people wanted, just because they couldn't get enough people to actually cast a vote. So the board went looking for a way around this problem. And they found this little clause. It gave them the exclusive right to construe and interpret the rules. And for them, a light bulb went off. Maybe they didn't have to change the rule. Maybe they could just change what the rule means. And that is exactly what they did. In that secret meeting, they didn't hold a vote to amend the voting rule itself. Oh no. Instead, they passed a resolution to interpret it. Their argument? The original wording was just too confusing, too ambiguous. So here's the magic trick. Their new interpretation completely changed the game. 80% of the total voting power no longer meant 80% of all 1,322 members. Suddenly, it meant 80% of the people who just happened to show up to a meeting. And that is how you turn a requirement of 1,058 votes into just 106. The board probably thought they were in the clear. They passed their resolution and immediately started using their new lower vote count to pass other changes. But one homeowner, a woman named Nancy Waugaman, saw what happened, and she decided to fight back. Her case was built on four really clear arguments. First, that secret meeting wasn't proper. Second, the board didn't just interpret the rule, they illegally rewrote it. Third, the original rule wasn't confusing at all, it was crystal clear. And fourth, the board simply didn't have the authority to do what they did. And so the fight was on. The whole thing landed in front of an administrative law judge. Now, a dispute affecting over 1,000 homeowners was going to come down to a legal breakdown of the board's actions, and more importantly, the power of words in a contract. And this was the real question the judge had to answer. If a contract gives you the power to interpret it, is that a blank check to change its meaning to whatever you want it to be? Or are there limits? The judge's logic started somewhere you might not expect. A dictionary. Yep, he literally looked up the word interpret. And the definition is pretty simple. To give the meaning of something, to make it clear. The key idea here is clarification, not creation. So from that simple definition, the judge made a crucial point. The board's power to interpret wasn't some kind of superpower. It could only be used if the rule was actually unclear or ambiguous to begin with. If the rule was already clear, well then there was nothing to interpret. So, was the original rule ambiguous? The judge zoomed in on three crucial words. In the association. The whole case, the rights of over 1,300 people, the power of the board, it all balanced on the meaning of this one little phrase. And the judge's ruling was decisive. He said that phrase, in the association, made the meaning unmistakable. It obviously meant 80% of the entire membership. He pointed out that if the writers had meant 80% of people at a meeting, they would have just left those 3 words out. So, no, the rule was not ambiguous. So you can see the judge's logic, right? It was almost like a checklist. 1, does the board have the power to interpret? Yes, the documents say so. 2, is that power unlimited? Nope, only for unclear stuff. 3, was this rule unclear? Absolutely not. Which leads to the final step. 4, the board's resolution was totally invalid.
So with that logic all laid out, the judge issued his final order. And this is where the verdict has huge implications that go way beyond just this one community in Arizona. And the order was a complete slam dunk for the homeowner. The board's resolution? Thrown out. All those other amendments they passed using the phony 106 vote math? Also thrown out. And to top it off, the association had to pay back Nancy Waugaman's $2,000 filing fee. The old rules were officially back.
And in his decision, the judge wrote this really powerful line that gets to the absolute core of why this matters. He said, "A community's governing document is a contract between the association and every single one of its members, and every member have a right to trust that the contract will be followed."
So the huge takeaway here is simple but so important. Words matter. In any set of community rules, in any contract, every single word has power. And the ability to interpret those words is for making things clearer. It's not a license to rewrite the entire deal. And I think it's crucial to remember the human side of this. This huge change didn't come from some big corporate lawsuit. It came from just one homeowner who read the rules, understood them, and had the courage to stand up, ultimately restoring the rights of her entire community. Which really brings us to a final question for you to think about. How well do you actually know the rules for your own community? Do you know what it takes to change them? And maybe more importantly, do you know who holds the power to decide what they really mean?